us to rise up, to rise up. All these times are calling us to rise up, to rise up. And were you there when they left us sick to die? Were you there when they left us sick to die? All these times are calling us to rise up, to rise up. All these times are calling us to rise up, to rise up. Were you there when we were all denied? Were you there? All these times are calling us to rise up, to rise up. All these times are calling us to rise up, to rise up. Were you there when they said our kind should be denied? Were you there?
Welcome to the Freedom Church of the Poor. This is Saturday, April 19th. We are glad that you found your way here to this movement, spiritual home for movement leaders. And tonight we have a very special service on Saturday before what is Easter Sunday for the Christian tradition. It's a more intimate service tonight. We are actually not going to live stream our service until later in next week. So we're just going to record here in Zoom and be together. But to get us started, I'm going to do as we always do and read our mission statement. Freedom Church of the Poor is a spiritual home for movement leaders. We believe in the fundamental dignity and value of all life and in a world of abundance where all can thrive. We gather as a community of faith to support and care for each other. We commit to realizing the abundant world that God promises by identifying, developing, and uniting leaders who will build a movement to end poverty led by the poor. In this community and through our commitment to this struggle, we also seek to rediscover and share a vision and practice of religion that is rooted in truth, justice, and love. And yeah, well, welcome again. This is really nice to be here together. Just to say a few words of framing before we continue, but it has been a real blessing to be together for this this season, where we've had a chance to lament and to share our fears and insights and to study together and to make connections with each other and to organize even a little bit, and also just to continue to find our collective power and vision together. So today is the second to last day of the season of struggle and lament of what the Christian tradition calls Lent. It is also the Sabbath, and the Sabbath, Abraham Heschel is a day that he describes as a day that it gives us a foretaste of paradise. And I believe that he talks about it in this way, not as because it's some day that we'll finally get to rest and be at ease, but that it's a day when we can kind of remember what it would be like to rest in God, when God, or that which binds us all in love and justice, will truly guide us, um, and is truly held at the center of our way of being and relating to each other in this world. So the Sabbath is a day of remembrance and of hope for when we will one day come together in loving and just community. It's a day to share the vision of a world that's not centered on profit margins or the domination of a few or the supremacy of a few, but of a world that is grounded in healing and shared abundance and love. And the story of Jesus, and in particular this final week where Jesus dies and is resurrected, reminds us and shows us that this world is not some dream, um, or utopia, but is already at hand. And today, the day after Good Friday, after this violent state execution of Jesus, we begin to glimpse this world again. The freedom fighters and prophets that have passed before us begin to rise again in the stories. We read this in the scriptures in Matthew. Enduring these prophets and what they taught endure in the truth that they shared and of what they revealed then gives us strength anew for our continued struggle. Um, so I'm just so grateful for this community and for the honesty and compassion that we share, the humor, the love that we bring, and especially tonight, very grateful for our dear Minister Moses, who's going to be leading us in tonight's reflection. But before we get there, I want to take a minute and read our special scriptures. Again, this is not often the scriptures that are read on Saturday. I think we're drawing these from a study that we've been doing of Dominic Crossan and Marcus Borg's book called The Last Week. So these are some scriptures from that, and I will um, share those and read those. Let's see here. Okay, so the first is from Daniel chapter 12, verses 2 to 3. Many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. Those who are wise shall shine like brightness of the sky, and those who lead many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. And this is from something called the Sibylline Oracles, a more ancient source than the New Testament scriptures, but influenced the vision and community, the early Jesus community. There will be no sword on earth or din of battle, and the earth will no longer be shaken, groaning deeply. There will no longer be war, but there will be great peace throughout the whole earth. Prophets of the great God will take away the sword, for they themselves are judges of men and righteous kings. There will also be just wealth among men, for this is the judgment and dominion of the great God. And finally, from Matthew 27, verses 51 and to 53, this, I'll read. At that moment, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth shook and the rocks were split. The tombs were opened, and many bodies of saints who had fallen asleep were raised. And after his resurrection, they came out of the tombs and entered the holy city and appeared to many. Some powerful scriptures, and I think add a lot of depth to this story of Holy Week. And here to help us think more about that, we invite Minister Moses.
Yeah, hey everyone. Good to see everyone on tonight. I think I know everyone here, but if you don't know me, my name is Moses. I use the pronouns here, they. And yeah, I am grateful that I got to take some time to reflect on this tonight. And, I was thinking about, Holy Saturday in some ways is kind of like an interesting day in Holy Week because I feel like every other day kind of has like a thing or like a huge event that took place on it. So, Thursday's Last Supper, Friday, Jesus died. Obviously, Sunday is when he rose. But nothing really happens on Saturday. And as Adam was talking about, we've been basing our season off of this book the last week. And this text primarily draws from the Gospel of Mark. And the reason why we don't actually have a Mark reading tonight is if you've ever read the Gospel of Mark, you'll know that there's actually no account of the Saturday after Jesus died. Mark goes straight from Jesus dying on the cross straight into after the Sabbath when folks come to anoint the body of Jesus. And so today, as you see from the scriptures, is typically known as like the harrowing of hell, where Jesus was going down and rescuing folks from hell and kind of taking them out of hell. And this idea of rescuing folks from hell, it had a great significance in early Judaism because for early Jewish folks, the hope of the resurrection, it came out of struggle. Early Jewish freedom fighters had given their lives to fight against oppression, and many of them had died very brutally, very violently, and under very dangerous conditions. And the Gospel of Mark, too, was also written right before the first Jewish Roman War. And so people were kind of anticipating that a lot more people were going to die and that it was going to be a lot more brutal. And so what the resurrection meant, for these folks and what it meant to tell these early community is that Jesus was going down and was rising again and bringing all the folks. It was basically saying that all these people who had previously died and all these people that people were anticipating were going to die would get to enjoy the fruits of something great, and their deaths would not be in vain, and they would be able to really like have the freedom and the justice that they had died fighting for. And so I think as many folks probably know here, I've talked about it before, but I'm Catholic. I was raised Catholic. I went to Catholic grade school and Catholic high school. And something that I think about a lot is that when I was taught these stories, and in particular, especially stories about Jesus, I don't really think that they were ever, I didn't have the experience of them being taught like maliciously or like in bad ways as they can be misused, but I certainly learned about them in a pretty disconnected way. I kind of always learned that Jesus was basically like a miracle worker, and all these stories in the gospel, all these things that Jesus said in the gospel, there was never really emphasis on like the conditions that Jesus was up against or what his followers were actually facing. But instead it was just kind of talking about all these kind of miraculous things that he ended up doing, kind of without this context of mass poverty, mass hunger, political oppression. None of that was ever a part of this. But throughout this season, right, as we've been doing these close readings on this one week, one thing that I've repeatedly kind of been struck with and that I've been thinking a lot about is the humanness of these stories. And that's actually where I want to focus some of our reflection a little bit tonight, is not actually on Jesus, but actually on the disciples. Because tomorrow on Easter is where we get to talk about the resurrection. But tonight on Holy Saturday, on the Sabbath, I actually think it's about not knowing. I think it's about sitting in the grief and the pain and not knowing how you will ever be able to move forward. As we've studied this season, we've seen the intensity and the scrutiny, the political oppression, the political violence against Jesus and his movement. And now we're here on Holy Saturday, and we're here on the Sabbath, and Jesus has been brutally executed. And in the silence of Mark's gospel, in the silence of the Saturday in Mark's gospel, I think we should think about the silence and the shock that probably just permeated these communities after seeing their leader executed. I mean, can you imagine what they were thinking? Can you imagine how they must have been replaying the last week in their head over and over again, asking the questions, Where did it go wrong? Where did I fail? Could it have been stopped? Could I have stopped it? Could we have stopped it? And if you just think about how hopeless it must have felt too, and how big the Roman Empire must have felt, how unstoppable it must have felt for the disciples. They had been building this movement for a long time. And when it came to the most crucial moment, they weren't able to rise up and defeat the Roman Empire as they might have all thought they were going to be able to do. And I think that's probably something that's really familiar to us. I think we all have witnessed and lived through violent and oppressive measures that those in powers have taken either in our community or in communities across the world. And I think we've all had moments of just being silenced and grief and in pain and shock at the suffering around us. And I'm sure many of us have probably looked at the US empire and thought to ourselves, we are never going to be able to defeat this. This is too big. This is too much. They're too powerful. That is probably something that many of us have struggled with before. And I think as organizers, I feel like it's kind of a rite of passage to have the experience of like getting your ass kicked for the first time. Our mentor, Willie Baptist, often talks about the mistake of organizing, where we think that we're going up against a teddy bear, but we're actually going up against a grizzly bear. And I was thinking a lot about this with the story. And I was thinking in my own life a couple years back, when I was doing an organizing drive with homeless folks in Atlanta, I remember having like this initial kind of courage and fire about really throwing down and organizing with folks, but things got messy very quickly and very hard very quickly. And eventually the city slammed down on folks. And when they did slam down, they actually slammed down harder than before we had even started organizing. And that consumed me with guilt for a very long time. And it consumed me with guilt that things seemed to have gotten worse when we took a stand. And I remember feeling really shocked and really frozen with fear at just like the brutality of the system. And I remember in one conversation that I was having with Kristen, while I was holding all the grief at the time, one of the things she said to me is, no one ever thought you were going to end homelessness in Atlanta. But what you can do is you can learn from this and you can grow from it. And then we can go out and we can try again. And I thought about that because with the disciples, I can only imagine that this experience has probably shattered whatever ideas these poor fishermen from the hood, who got organized, knew what they thought they were up against. Because I'm sure after this, now they probably really know what they're up against, and they probably really have a deeper understanding of how brutal what they're fighting against is. And ultimately, as the disciples are paralyzed with grief and are paralyzed with shock, they have two options. They can either succumb to that and they can give up, or they can look at what they've built. They can realize where they fell short. They can reassess the enemy. They can regroup. They can reorganize and move forward. And of course, we all know what option they did chose, but that option is not for the faint of heart. And I think that there is something that we can learn from the Sabbath about how we navigate through that grief and fear. Adam, Sierra, and I have been doing this Sabbath Innovation Lab with the 1001 worshiping communities. And it's been about trying to inspire us to learn more about the Sabbath and have a Sabbath practice in our own life. And I am absolutely not one to speak definitively on the Sabbath. I actually kind of feel like I've been failing out of the Sabbath lab, to be honest. But one thing that I have kind of repeatedly reflected on is about how the Sabbath, and kind of what Adam was talking about earlier, is that the Sabbath is a day for rest and reflection, not so that we prepare ourselves to do more work or because it will make us a better worker for the next day. The Sabbath is about rest and reflection because for us as humans, that's part of the human experience, and that's part of what we need. It's part of what God intended for us and wanted for us. God themselves rested when they were making the world. And so we too are supposed to rest alongside God. And so in many ways, for me, the Sabbath is about trying to be present, which is hard for me because I'm never present. I'm always planning. I'm always thinking about the next day. I'm always thinking about what I need to do. I'm always making checklists. I'm always worrying. But on the Sabbath, we're supposed to be taking a breath, and we're supposed to be taking a pause to honor God and to honor ourselves. And so I think actually there's a deep significance that we're supposed to be thinking about, knowing that the Sabbath fell on the day after Jesus's death. Because after Jesus died, the disciples didn't get their stuff together and start, getting organized and like, whatever. They didn't, because actually, first of all, it was just against their religious code to do so. And then also, how would they be able to do that, right? With the grief and with the shock. But instead, they had to take a pause and reflect and mourn before they could think about moving forward. In the Catholic Church, during the Eucharistic prayers, one of the things that the congregation does is they pray for those who have fallen asleep in the hope of the resurrection. And in many ways, I think that's what this day is supposed to be about. It's actually not yet about celebrating the resurrection. It's not about celebrating the world that we've built or that we're building, but it's about sitting with the understanding that we have not yet been able to bring that world about. And because of that, there are so many people in our lives, in our family, and our movement family, our ancestors, who have fallen asleep before we were able to build God's kingdom here on earth. And so before we jump forward to celebrating ourselves and our movements and our churches, we have to take pause and we have to reflect and mourn that we have not yet been able to bring about that resurrection. We have to mourn that we have been working and waiting and hope for the resurrection. And sometimes it doesn't feel like it's ever going to come. And sometimes we feel paralyzed by the enemy before us. And sometimes it feels impossible to get up and regroup and try again to organize. And so tonight, I think one thing that I think would be good for all of us to do on here, but then also off of here, is to take some time to talk with those who have fallen asleep in the hope of the resurrection. I invite us all to stop moving and pushing and planning just for a few minutes and to sit down and think about and pray about and actually talk to those in our lives who have passed on. Take the opportunity to share with them how you're feeling, share with them what we're doing, right? Share with them that you love them and that you miss them and that you think of them and that they're on your mind and on your heart. Things are always going to be moving and we will always have a million things to do. But it is necessary for ourselves and for our movement and for those that came before us to intentionally take the time to pause and to reflect and to pray. And to ask ourselves too, what are moments where we underestimated the enemy before us? Where did we fall short in fighting for the resurrection? And who in our lives or in our traditions have fallen asleep before we could bring about the promise of God's resurrection? This reflection is not something that we do if we have the time, or it's not something to do just so we can be better at our work or just so we can be well rested to get back into it the next day. It's something that we have to do because we're human and we need to foster these periods of connection and rest because that's part of what makes us human. We need to feel the shock and the grief and the weight of the world that we feel as revolutionaries. That doesn't mean we have to let it paralyze us, and that doesn't mean that it has to stop us, but we also can't ignore it either. We can't ignore the gravity of what we have tried to do or what we have failed to do or what we are still fighting to do. And we cannot forget and ignore those who we did not bring about the resurrection in time for. And so I think what I want to invite us all to do for just a minute or so is if we all just kind of want to take a minute actually to just sit in silence. I invite folks, if you're multitasking or doing whatever, if you can, wherever you are, to just take a second and try to be present and try to use this moment for what you need it to reflect on this year or to speak to someone that you miss. But I invite us all to just take the second and I can let us know when the time is up. All right. Thank you all. Adam, I don't know if I'm passing it back to you.
Sure. Yeah, thank you so much, Moses. It was really nice. And I just I thought we do have a kind of informal um intimate service tonight, and I thought maybe we would actually just take um a few minutes and see if those of us here have any just reflections or things you want to bring into the space to share based on what Moses was sharing or the readings or just where you're at. Just kind of take that discussion time now before we finish with our prayers and final song. But yeah, I just want to invite folks to share if you can. Always good to hear from folks. I think one thing I was just thinking about Moses though was this Sibylline oracle, and like I think it's a very interesting text, and I'd have to go back and read more about where it all comes from, but I think there's some kind of like Greek influence on there, but I think it's also it's influencing how I think the movement understands the end times, and you know this is something to me in my experience with Christianity that has always been so pivotal, like, and the people around me, their faith was always kind of grounded by this promise of like the next world. And um but like you read this Sibylline Oracle and it's very much like about a different way of life and a different way of living. And I think you can take that and say, okay, yeah, there's going to be this magical place like in the clouds where those things happen. But it's like if you read that too, it's just like it's describing our world. It's describing like the things around us. Um and so I just, yeah, I mean, any time that we can remember that the struggle of those in the gospel, I mean, I think they were they were thinking about this world, and they were thinking about the bread on this earth and this day and this time, this world, you know what I mean? And how they had started to get a glimpse of that in the community that had been organizing and fighting and seeing um, you know, the way that they wanted to be. And anyway, so it's just such a I think a critical point that we've made in many ways in this community, but it comes up again in this, and the vision that's presented in this Sibylline Oracle is really striking, and I think glad we were able to read that. So, Katie.
Oh gosh, it's so good to be with y'all. Minister Moses, thank you for inviting this space for like connecting with people who aren't here, and then also the like the spaces where you know we or the movement or whatever has seemed to fail, battles that have been lost in this war that's being engaged with. Like I'm thinking of, I there's a story of my great grandfather who was in the labor movement and ended up throwing a scab over a bridge instead of like seeing the enemy as the wrong person, right? And I'm thinking of people who died in the streets in the meantime while we were organizing in the streets, and the fights that have been had in the midst of organizing space, and the division that has been sown ahead of time for us but that we keep falling into. Um and sometimes it's good to sit in that reflective space to be able to do it differently. um but thank you for the invitation to sit in kind of the mess and the pain today, with still the promise of tomorrow, but to sit with that today. I really appreciate it.
Same. Thanks, Katie. Sierra?
Yeah, similarly, I just wanted to thank you, Minister Moses, for this word. I think it's so important because we're in a very protracted struggle, and the enemy that we're up against has been organized and, you know, doing this thing for quite some time. And I feel like it's important for us to take time to sit and reflect, and also to remember those who we've lost along the way. You know, when you were talking, I was just thinking of so many, battles that I feel like were lost, people that have been lost in this struggle, whether due to direct state violence or just indirectly, just from the despair of the violent system that we're under. And I wanted to lift up a few folks. I wanted to lift up Marshawn McCarroll, who left us way too soon. I want to lift up Mr. B, Harry Belafonte, and I want to lift up Danny Agnew. Thank you.
Thanks, Sierra. Father Ty.
Well, yeah, again, thank you, Mr. Moses, for tonight. And actually, thank you all for the whole Lenten season. It's been very, like you said, Adam, on the way in, it's been very powerful. I mean, I'll just speak personally for myself. And being on like an extended sabbatical, what you were sharing tonight about Sabbath was so like helpful and encouraging because partly I'm on a sabbatical because of these same conditions of empire really sent a deep rupture in the Church of Baltimore, and so losing a parish to closure, it's making me think a lot in these days about mentors that helped form me in my priesthood that are no longer with us, and and they lived and died hoping to see a better, quite honestly, a better church on earth, like that we've lifted up in this Freedom Church of the Poor space. So I think of mentors of my past, like Father Ed Miller and Father Damon Alep and Father Dick Lawrence, who really were city priests, who were really trying to help bridge all those dividing lines, and really did tremendous work. And feeling like the work of a generation or two is really under threat, and thinking about ways to, wow, when you were saying like in this silence to like sit, to grieve, to reassess, and then to maybe think about like how do we reorganize out of this? So timely. So thank you so much for this space for us to be able to like learn from failures, learn from what didn't work, and really not with that sense of giving up, but going deeper. And maybe that's the harrowing part of it all too, just to borrow that imitation of Jesus on that icon for today. It's a difficult harrowing, but necessary and important. And yeah, so thank you for the texts for tonight too. I've never really sat with the sibling oracles. I think there's something powerful in there too. And just this whole space across Lent, sitting with this last week of Jesus and really diving deep into and realizing it's not just Jesus, it is not just Jesus and the disciples around him in those days, but how we're connected into this week. And we represent this week each year, and in many ways, maybe across each week ourselves. So thank you so much. I'm taking so much from this that's I think really important to think about the next chapters for all of us. And I'm kind of hopefully optimistic with all of that. So, and that's only because of these great spaces of Freedom Church of the Poor. So thank you all.
Thanks so much, Father Ty. I love all of that, and I'm grateful you brought in those names of fallen fighters. Jan, did you want to share, or I could share your? I see you put something in the chat.
No, I just put it in the chat because I wasn't sure I could say it out loud. So
Oh, okay. Thank you. Any others who'd like to share before we go to our prayers? I think Alex has offered to lead us in the prayers for the people. Okay. So maybe we'll just go there. Alex, if you're ready.
Yeah, hello. Greetings,
Oh,
everyone.
beautiful.
This is we're in Purgatory Chasm, Massachusetts, currently. Um, thought it might be appropriate for the harrowing day. Um, yeah, honored to be with you all on this sacred day. Um, let's talk to God. God, on quiet days like this and sorrowful days like this, days where we contemplate death and defeats and frustrations. We we don't know. We don't know, and that frightens us. But we sense somehow some kind of miracle churning on days like this, or even if we don't sense it, somehow in unseen ways, you renew us. You fulfill your promises of renewal. But even so, we don't want to rush past days like this. We want to share your grief and each other's grief, and experience our own grief. We thank you for our sisters and our brothers and fathers and mothers and comrades and teachers and friends who have gone over, passed beyond. And what we remember about them is that they saw something that was possible, that was just over the horizon. And we wish to honor them in our grief, our anger, our love, and our fight to realize what they saw. We thank you that in your grace and the grace of existence, there is a time for rest and contemplation, for feeling instead of always doing. We thank you that we have one another to remind us of this, to rest in this, to rest with one another, and to rest in one another. Let us be able to do that more, even as we move along. May your world be realized evermore, and even when we do not see it, let us believe that it is surely coming. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Brother Alex. Really has been special to be together. I'm just gonna remind us that tomorrow is our Liberation Sunday service. Gonna be, I'm really looking forward to it. It's gonna be a very rich time of prayer and song and music and testimony and yeah, community. So please come back tomorrow and bring others. We'll start at 6, and then we're entering into our new season, Days of Liberation, after that. So just keep growing the community and keep coming together, and that's what we do. And I want to take us out tonight with a rendition of Ella's song that Sierra offered. I don't know, Sierra, if you want to say just a word about why we chose this for tonight, or I can just play it and we can enjoy it together.
Minister Moses chose this song.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Moses. You want to intro to it?
Yeah, I guess I don't have much to say other than I know it maybe feels a little bit contradictory, but in some ways I feel like it's really related. So yeah, that's all.
Great. So we'll take it out with this.
Tell the story, y'all. Tell the story.
Ella Baker was a revolutionary leader, teacher, and organizer in the Black freedom movement who dedicated her life to the fight for human rights. She believed deeply in the power of ordinary people to create change and lifted up young people as leaders in the struggle. Ella Baker embodied courage and faith in collective action, believing that the struggle for justice demands dedication and long-term commitment.
We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. Oh, we who believe in freedom cannot rest. Oh, we who believe in freedom cannot rest until the killing of black men, black mothers' sons is as important as the killing of a white man, white mothers' sons. Oh, you believe in freedom cannot rest. No, 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 you believe in freedom cannot rest.
That which touches me most is that I had the chance to work with people, passing on to others that which was passed on to me. To me, young people come first. They have courage when we fail. If I can shed some light as they carry us through the gale.
You believe in freedom cannot rest. No, 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 you believe in freedom cannot rest.
Older I get, the better I know, the sicker of my going on. 'Cause when the reins are in the hands of the young who dare to run against the storm, not needing to clutch to power, not needing all the light to shine on me. I need to be one in the number as we stand against tyranny.
You have to go back and reach out to your neighbors who don't speak to you. And you have to reach out to your friends who think they are making it good and get them to understand that they, as well as you and I, cannot be free in America or anywhere else where there is capitalism and imperialism.
Struggling myself don't mean a whole lot. I've come to realize that teaching others to stand up and fight is the only way the struggle survives. I'm a woman who speaks in a voice, and I must be heard. At times I can be quite difficult. I'm bound to no one's word.
Freedom, cannot rest. No, 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 we who believe in freedom, cannot rest.
Freedom, by definition, is no constraints and no coercion. But there's been diversion, so off course we're swerving. Of course it's unnerving. We ain't start the ghetto burning. They built the violence, constrain us, Hollywood coerce us. I build on verses, and they create the verses. We were natural healers, so they invested in how to hurt us. How to exploit us, and how to scam us out our cultures. They rotten like sulfur. Damn them greedy vultures. They're the ones who created poverty so they can stunt us and always front on us and never give us what we wanted. And that's freedom. Freedom like the beginning. Freedom from all their wicked ways and their sinnings. We want freedom to be. Hey yo, freedom to chill. We want freedom to live. We want freedom to build. We want freedom to live. We want freedom to build. We want freedom to be. We want freedom to chill. We want freedom to build.
Oh, what a beautiful song. Beautiful movement. Beautiful people. Thanks be to God and power to the people, y'all. Much love. We'll see each other soon.
Thank you. Thank you.
Have a good night, y'all.
Good night, everyone.
Take care.
Love y'all.